This is Breaking Down Security, and I am Brian Brake. Welcome back, listener. This is Brian, and always, he's the Doctor Who to my TARDIS, the Abbott to my Costello, the
Abbott!
Hey, Abbott! Yeah, that's Mr. Boettcher right there.
What's up?
Hey. Well, I mean, not much to say. I mean, I saw a movie last night. I saw The Huntsman, the sequel to that, or the prequel in this case. It was a pretty good movie, but I wouldn't call it a date movie. There's a lot of good violence in it. So, Chris Hemsworth, he's kind of a badass. So, you seen any good movies lately?
I will have to see that. I watched the Star Trek movie this morning, the new one, the first one, right, where Vulcan gets destroyed and stuff like that.
Okay. Yep. So it's the first, not the second one with the Cumberbatch or whatever his name is, Benedict or whatever. He plays Khan in the movie. Yes. Yeah, that's the second one.
That was a good Khan.
Yeah, that was really good. So, all right. So before we get started on our podcast this week, the response has been very overwhelming. Apparently, DerbyCon sold out in like 24 hours. Who knew? I know there was a lot of people unhappy, emailing Dave. I saw him on Facebook talking about how people were emailing him, asking him if they could get, tickets. And he's like, nope, don't have any tickets for you. Sorry. And
I knew it was headed in that direction. I just didn't know it would be that dramatic. From a month and a half, I guess, last year to, I don't know, a day.
Yeah, less than 24 hours. Yeah, I'm wondering if this if it gets as popular as like ShmooCon and those, if this is going to be the last DerbyCon we're going to be able to go to, because everybody's going to be refreshing their screens at 8 a.m. on that morning, and if you don't get in, you're SOL. So, yeah.
Yeah, ShmooCon, I had about three refreshes and it was over with.
Really?
For me. Yeah.
Well, you need faster internet.
It was like a Tyson fight, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, DerbyCon not being able to sell tickets, that gives people an opportunity to, hold contests and stuff, which is exactly what our podcast is doing. Nice segue.
There you go.
So, if you listened last week, we started our DerbyCon drawing in CTF. Those are two different things. We have 4 tickets, two for me and Mr. Boettcher, but there are 2 of them out there for us to give away to people. And one of them is a drawing that we're doing. I want to put that out around April 15th. The drawing around April 15th, that gives people enough time to still get an airline ticket and a hotel at a fairly decent price if they need to. So I think the drawing will be held on August 15th. At 5 p.m. or midnight UTC. And so what you do to get into the drawing is if you are a patron of our podcast before May 1st, you're already entered if you would like to. You just have to email me and let me know. If you haven't been a patron of our podcast, if you'd like to join the drawing and get a chance to win, you can donate at the $20 level. And at the $20 level, that will get you an entry into the drawing. The other option is you can also donate in increments of $50 to Hackers for Charity, which will get you an entry per $50. So if you donate $20 to, if you support us to $20 and then give $100, like one of our patrons already did, you'll get 3 entries into the drawing. So Miss Sunny, thank you. She's a longtime patron already, so she got an entry, but she also donated $100 to Hackers for Charity, which is fan-freaking-tastic. So she gets 3 entries into the drawing. We already have about, I'd say, half a dozen people in that already. So the other thing is, which I thought was pretty cool, we've been working on for a long time and had wanted to do last year, was our Capture the Flag. So last week, we gave the details on how to find the first flag. And this week is when the second flag will come out. If you found the first flag, which you'll have to listen to last week's podcast to find out how to get the first flag. I'm not going to go back and discuss all that. By finding the first flag, we'll give you information to find the second flag. And by finding the second flag, then third flag, fourth flag, and fifth flag. I think we're going to go for 5 flags. So you enter that, and I think it's going to be a race to the finish on that one. So whoever comes up with the 5th flag quickest is going to get the ticket. So that will be completely free. There's no entry to, you have to pay anything to win. You just have to be the smartest guy in the bunch, I guess. So,
or the quickest.
The quickest, and pick up on the flags quicker than anybody. So my wife's out watching John Wayne movie, one of my favorite movies of his. One of the characters has the name of a famous cipher, and I thought it's one of my favorite movies. It's pretty classic. I think he got a nomination.
But it's not a Western. I've seen all his Westerns.
No, it's definitely not a Western. But it's a pretty decent movie. With one of the characters has a name after a famous cipher. So, yeah. So, yeah. Let me see. What are we talking about this week? Let's see. We are talking about. Okay, so this one got me.
Restriction policies. Right?
Yeah, you told me that on Thursday. I was like, I don't know what this is. I've only heard of software restriction policies as like GPOs. When I worked at HP, we worked on a thing called the NMCI project, which, in my opinion, was a god-awful project. I mean, I guess it's gotten better in the last 7 or 8 years. But they had GPOs upon GPOs upon GPOs. I mean, nested GPOs. You run a GPO that runs 5 other GPOs and whatever, which restricted various things. Like you couldn't even change the time or set the date, or change things on the desktop, that kind of thing. So maybe you could explain to me why you want to use software restriction policies, Mr. Boettcher, because this is kind of your dog. This is your bag. I've never actually used them. I find them to be kind of restrictive.
Well, in most of the malware that I've analyzed, they put binaries in user space, which is going to be like the C users, and then they don't want to put them on the desktop or like in the downloads folder or someplace where you'd see them. So they typically choose the app data area, so application data. So what that directory is for applications to put their data into, and then they have temp files in there, stuff like that. But it's not really a place that executables should go. Okay. All right. So what we do as a strategy is set software restriction policies, and what that means is that software can't execute from those directories. All right. So you're setting a rule. You're saying it's okay to access data, but if you're going to start a new process, it can't be from there. So like I said, a lot of the malware we analyze, they'll drop a binary in the app data directory structure and then execute that binary. So you'll get a Word doc that has a VB script inside of it, and it'll run a command to create that file, and then it executes that file from there.
Okay. So, I mean, so why do you need to create a software restriction? Can't you just tell app data to, like under the properties or something to set no exec? Or, I mean, I would assume this is very similar to how you can set no exec on certain slices in Linux.
Well, you need some programs to be able to run there because they don't follow the rules.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
They don't follow those rules, so you need to be able to add exceptions. And that's the beauty of the software restriction policy, is that you can add these exceptions, and we'll get into that later. But it basically acts kind of like a firewall for executables. Okay.
So you set these per user, or can you just set this for system wide? Anybody who logs on or has a log on.
System wide.
Okay.
Right. And you can restrict it based on username, or you can put a star in there. So they got wildcards too. So you can do users, star, app data. Okay. And you can restrict any executables from starting in those directories.
And it's not just executables; it can do any kind of file associations, right? So if there's you could even make it more restrictive and say, I don't want text files running in this box, or I don't want what do they call those PIF files, PIFs, which were old school DOS executables or something like that.
Yeah, you can actually customize it to say, okay, here's what I define executables as, and you can put those file types in there.
Yeah,
in that list. It has a list already, which is all the Microsoft default executable files, but you can certainly add to that.
Okay, very nice. So the benefit obviously is that you're whitelisting what is allowed to run.
Exactly, it's a whitelist. We all know that blacklists are bad because it's a tit for tat, right?
Sure.
Well, here's your whitelist. You're defining what you're allowing, and anything outside of those is just not allowed.
Okay. So before we get too far in, when did, this is a question that didn't come up, but I'm wondering how long this has been inside of Windows, because I have never, ever used it, and I didn't know that it actually existed and was a thing. So it would be interesting to see when these came about.
While you look that up, I just want to say that, if you use this on your own computer and get familiar with it, you're going to be so much better off. Even if there's a new piece of malware that takes advantage of an O-Day in Microsoft Word, for example, that passes right through. You're like, well, I never click on macros anyway. I'm always looking for that. Well, there could be an O-Day in Microsoft Office where it doesn't even ask you if you want to allow macros. That happened to us a year and a half ago. There was an O-Day in Office. You open that Word doc and your system is owned. Yeah. At that point.
And when you open the Windows docs, it kind of inflates the doc inside the temp directory, right? Including the macro and everything. Where does it store the macro on the system? Because I assume that it's not running specifically.
I think it runs in memory.
So it just runs in memory. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's important to note that in order to maintain persistence, that malware has to write somewhere.
Yeah.
And typically it hides in the user space, just so it can be hidden amongst all the data. It'll hide itself as a temp file, something like that, but it will be an executable, just disguised as a temp file.
Okay. So in addition to my last question, it says, looks like software restriction policy started as a feature of Windows XP and Server 2003. So this has been around a while, at least in some form or another. And then there's this new thing that started with 7, 8, 8.1, and of course the servers 2008 and 2012. Called Applocker.
Yes. Applocker is valuable, but unfortunately you need enterprise.
Okay.
You need an enterprise version of Microsoft to run that. So it's not for everybody. If you do have a enterprise license, definitely take advantage of Applocker.
Okay, so
it's like software restriction policies, but it gives you a lot more.
Okay.
And what Applocker could give you is you could set it in audit mode. So you can, it's sort of like setting an IPS just in listening mode and seeing what all it would block. So that way you're not actually affecting your users in your company. You're just seeing what it would have blocked, and then you can create your policies over time. You can let it run for a month or two, and then all of a sudden put it in blocking mode at that point with everything you've whitelisted.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's some loopholes, right? I mean, you can, I'm sorry. So back to the benefits, it can be server or workstation based. So you can run those, you can run different profiles on each one. And we talked before the podcast, those can be pushed out via GPO. So you don't necessarily have to have the enterprise version of Windows 8. You could have like the home version or whatever and still get the benefits of the software restriction policies. But there's some loopholes, right? If the attacker tries to write files to the disk, you can if he doesn't try to write files, So if you can write directly to memory from the command line. I mean, how are you writing directly to memory?
Well, some some hackery doesn't write to disk. But again, it has to write to disk at some point if it maintains persistence. So if you reboot your system, and you should reboot every day or every other day if you can. I realize that on a workstation you can, but on a server you may not be able to. But there's other ways to catch those in-memory only malware. But we're talking about the 80-90%, right?
Yeah.
80-90% aren't the super stealthy in-memory only that could bypass these software restriction policies. Or if they have, by default, they believe that most users don't have access to, say, C program files or C Windows temp, things like that, which require administrative privileges. And you usually get that pop-up that says, hey, would you like this program to run now with administrative privileges?
Yeah,
right?
the UAC.
So the malware authors and hackers don't like that pop-up because then people question, what the heck is this? They want to be stealthy. So that's why they put it in the user space, which doesn't require that type of pop-up.
Yeah.
And so these things are written with that in mind. And fortunately for us, by putting in these policies, we'll be able to catch it.
Yep. I mean, and that's just for new stuff. I mean, if you were using legitimate programs like at the company I work at, I have seen things where bad guys they like to use the tools that are available on the box. So instead of trying to load your own packer for, exfilling data, they'll use makecab.exe, which is a archival type tool that is already in Windows to, tar up your data to be pushed out. And that's a trusted application, which is already installed on the box. And unless you restrict access to that application, which will break your system for the most part, that's another way to get around the software restriction policy. Use what's there.
Well, it depends on what calls that, right? Something has to call that. So that thing that calls it, where is that running from? If it's running in user space or it's trying to execute from user space to run it, these policies will catch it.
Oh,
they won't. Once it's already running, like say you accidentally give it permission or you turn software restriction policies off, it's not going to matter if the executable is already running. But like I said, typically we're talking 80-90% of malware out there, and all of the crypto locker that even Michael Goff has seen runs from user space. It drops an executable in user space and then executes it.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So, of course, the reason you guys are interested in this is because if you have software restriction policies in place and somebody attempts to do something naughty on the system, it will throw up log entries that you can use to find people doing bad things or people attempting to do bad things.
That's right. And the log entries not only helps us detect that, but it also gives you insight into what was trying to run. If it was a program you were trying to install, a lot of installation programs drop an executable in user space and then execute it for the installation to take place. You can turn off your software restriction policies, install the software, and then turn it back on.
Yeah.
Just to allow that installation to take place.
Yep.
So there's there is a little bit of extra work there if you want to install new software, or you can, as a security person or as an admin, you can turn on the policy, install the software, and then write exceptions, and then push out exceptions to all users saying, "Hey, this software is approved. It shouldn't be blocked by software restriction policies."
Yeah. And of course you have to release the restrictions before you push any patches out to your environment.
Yeah, you can push out these rules, right? So that way if someone does try to install the software, it'll work if the rules are properly defined.
Yeah.
So where do you start? You can start right now. I mean, make a note as to the time of this MP3 because you're going to want to come back and you're going to want to try this on your own computer. It just takes a couple of minutes, right? So what you do is you, in your start menu in the little box, you type local and you should see the program pop up on the top that says local security policy. So click on that. And then you want to click on new software restriction policy, and then basically you'll want to start creating your rules from there. So I'm going to do that here. I'm using Windows 10. I haven't done it in Windows 10 yet, since this is the only Windows 10 box that I have, that I own, and it happens to be the one we record on.
Now, why were you doing it on Windows 10? Where you were using what before, like Windows?
I was using 7.
Oh, okay. I thought you were still using 2000 or something. Anyway.
XP. Come on, man.
So while you're getting your demo up, some of the things you can use, some of the other gotchas is, to be able to secure your boxes that I'm going to talk about is non-administrator accounts or something exploiting them should not have write permissions anywhere they can run a dangerous file. And one of the things you can use to find what the permissions are on some of your folders really easily is by using some of the sysinternal stuff called, one of them is called access check, to figure out, who has access to what, without having to have a GUI. So if you're doing this remotely through like a PowerShell instance or something, you can run access check and find out, what permissions are on program files or see windows or, who has access to what. So if in the event you do make your software restriction policy more restrictive and you find that you can no longer boot your system, you will have to boot into safe mode and disable the software restriction. So that's another thing. If somebody can gain access via safe mode, they can disable your software restriction policies. So that's always an interesting thing. So we mentioned overriding. When you're overriding, let's say you're downloading something, say VLC or GIMP. You're downloading one of those things and you have to have that on your system. One of the ways when you're downloading it from your browser to be able to run, like run as or whatever, you have to run your browser as an admin. And in doing so, you want to override. So you run Firefox, you run Chrome as an admin, then you can download and run, install the software directly from the browser. The other methods is making sure when you run your exe files, anything that ends in exe, you can run as administrator. You right-click and run as administrator. MSI files, they don't work the same as exe. You have to actually copy the MSI file into program files if you have this software restriction set, and then answer the UAC prompt. And we got some links that go through some of these items. One I found interesting. Are you ready to go, Mr. Boettcher?
Well, it appears in Windows 10 you can't just do it like Windows 7, so I'm having to Google it.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I forgot that I upgraded the computer that we used to record, so I wasn't ready to actually open the policy editor during the recording. Oh. It's interesting because when you ask Cortana. Right?
I don't use Cortana.
It just
don't turn that off. Turn that off. I don't.
Whoever that is says, "Hey, let's go to the web and find out."
Cortana is like the new Clippy, man. I've noticed that you would like to open.
Yeah,
I've noticed that you wanted to open software restriction policies.
Cortana,
that's funny. That's funny. Well, here's a TechNet article from April 6th. I will put this in the show notes as well. Let's see. So using SRP and Applocker in the same domain. Apparently, they do work nicely together. So you can have group policy objects that will push out stuff for your users, but then you can also go in as a user and set your own software restriction policies if you want to, add additional. Mm-hmm. Let me see.
Come on, Windows.
Go, Windows, go. You can also test the effect of Applocker policies by using window PowerShell commandlets. Oh, this is a good link. I'm going to definitely put this one in the show notes. Sorry, folks, this is real life here. This is how everything works on a podcast. Sometimes things don't work as normal. So
usually they don't. Right?
Yeah. So, well, dang. Okay, so that one's Windows. This is Windows 8, which discusses how to get into it. I think the MMC, I think you have to go in. Let me see. I'm on Windows 10. Let me see if I can do it because I've been using it a little longer than you have.
Yeah, it basically says open local security settings.
Okay, so you go up to...
how do you do that?
Okay, so on your desktop, you go to... You see the little Windows icon over there?
Yes.
Okay, so right-click on it.
Yep.
And go to Computer Management.
Woohoo! There we go.
So that'll bring you up to the Computer Management Console, which, and then at that point, I think you should be good to go, right?
No, I can't find it.
Oh, okay.
That's a bummer.
Open local security settings in the console tree. Click software restriction policies.
Run gpedit.msc. Okay, run
gpedit.msc. Hey, yeah. Microsoft Common Console document. Hello! Found it. That's it.
Hey, it says Windows cannot find gpedit.msc.
Which version of Windows do you got?
10.
Oh. Well, I found it. Local Group Policy Editor. There it is. Yeah. So, yeah, gpedit. So, I just click on that gpedit.msc. And it says best match Microsoft Common Console document. Click on that. And then it says administrative templates, policies.sensors, Windows location providers already defined as a target namespace in another file in the store. So I just click OK. Resource string referenced in attribute display name cannot be found. Boy, there's a lot of OKs, but it allowed me to get in.
Are you kidding me?
No. So security settings. Yeah. User software settings. Yes. Scripts, security settings, policy-based QoS, deployed printers.
Why? Every time I try to open Group Policy Editor, it takes me to the store. Like it opens up Internet Explorer and takes me to the store.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Search.
It shouldn't be the store. It shouldn't be any store thing. IP security policies based on local computer. Software restriction policies. Ding. Oh, no software restriction policies defined. If you define restriction policies in this group policy object, they will override inherited policy settings from the group policy objects. Click New Software Restriction Policies in the Action menu. Oh, boy, so maybe this only works on the enterprise versions because I've got the full version of Windows 10, I think, and it's not working for me. Let me double check, make sure I've got the full version.
Oh, command prompt. Let me try it from the command prompt.
Yeah, do CMD. Let's see. Computer system. There it is. System. I have Windows 10 Pro. And so maybe it doesn't work in Windows.
gpedit is not recognized as an internal or external command.
Oh, there it is. So you right click on software restriction policies. There you go. Security levels, additional rules. Here, let me share my screen for you.
Okay, how'd you get there?
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, you can see
How'd
it.
You get
Okay.
there?
So I clicked on the Windows icon up here.
You right click?
No, I just finger clipped with my index finger, and then I did gpedit.msc. MSC. And what it should say is best match if you're using Windows 10 Pro. Now, I don't know what version you got, but it says gpedit.msc Microsoft Common Console document. I clicked on it, and there will be a bunch of errors that come up about administrative templates already being found, something Windows geolocation, yada, yada, yada. Just click OK through all of those, and it eventually will stop trying to unload. And then what it is you'll go down to, there's Windows settings, under computer configuration, Windows settings, security settings, software restriction policies, and then it'll say, oh, you've got to do something inside of the action menu, but there's no Oh, well, there it is. Huh. Okay, so it wasn't working for me earlier, but now it is. You can right-click on software restriction policies and say add new restriction policy. You can actually delete software restriction policies as well using this. So right-click new software restriction policy, and then you can set security levels, disallowed, basic user, and unrestricted. And then here's your registry entries talking about, the paths in various things. There's in the additional rules, there's 2 entries under Microsoft, Windows NT, HT local machine, software, Microsoft, Windows NT, current version, system root, and program files dir. They're the same. So their security levels unrestricted. So you can set the security levels to disallowed, basic user, unrestricted. Do me a favor, go back up to your Windows icon where the button is. Right-click on it and go to System.
Okay.
Now, what does it tell you? Do you have Windows 10 Pro? It says Windows Edition, Windows 10 Pro?
No, it just says Windows 10.
Okay, you have the Home Edition, which is the suck.
All right. When I tried it in PowerShell, it said the term GPEdit is not recognized.
Mm-hmm.
Object not found.
Yeah, I assume that you're not running Windows 10 Pro. You're getting like the home version. So this will only work on Enterprise and Pro versions. There may be a way you can load it in Windows 10 Home, but yeah, you got to really watch what you're getting when you get your Windows versions. So,
right. Okay. So software restriction policies is not available in Home.
That's what it appears to be. Yeah.
Okay. So does it say that somewhere on the web?
Apparently not. So anyway, the other thing I thought was interesting was I was like, well, what is this? What happens? There's a lot more people now using Macs in their environment. So I have a Mac Mini that I used to have. I used to have a MacBook, but I got it died after 5 years. So I was looking around inside of El Cap to see what would be in the way of parental controls for restricting users' access to, various things, just like software reduction policy. The only thing that I could find that even fit the bill was something called parental controls, which, sounds kind of condescending, you being the IT guy, enabling parental controls on your users' machines. But there's some things in here that you could definitely, use to restrict access to at least certain websites, or you could make it so that they only have access to certain applications or certain utilities. You can make it so they can use the video camera or the webcam on the box. I don't think it gets granular like I haven't seen anything where it says, oh, you can lock down USB, but you can do things like disable printing and scanners. You can block CD and DVD burning. That might be a good thing if you are worried about having that ability. You can prevent the dock from being modified. You can also use a simple finder. So there's other things you can do if you're a Mac shop. I'm assuming you can push out these policies over the network as well. You can also set things like time limits. So if your users go home after 8 hours and they don't work on weekends, you can set certain users to not be able to log in on the weekends, or not being able to log in during a certain midnight or 1 a.m. With parental controls also, you can say, well, bedtime is 9 p.m. You shouldn't be using it after that. But I think you can get less granular. You can even block iTunes Store, so people can't buy music or download applications from the iTunes or the iStore. That's an option if you're in a Mac shop. I wouldn't call them parental controls, but I would just say, we've added restrictions to your users' accounts. You can't access any sites. I would probably set it to 17 and 17 plus. There's different levels you can set it to, which was odd. It's like 4, 7, 11, or 17 or something like that. So I would set it to like 17. And, you can also limit mail one of the other things, you can limit mail to allowed contacts only. So if you didn't want people to be able to email certain people, you can also manage all those things and say, okay, you can edit, you can manage you can email people outside the company, or you can get a request to the admin account to say, okay, this person's trying to email these people. It's not perfect, and I'm sure there's other products to manage that kind of stuff in Windows. But if you want it quick and dirty, you might want to look into seeing what other parental controls can be added to that. So. All right, what did we learn, Mr. Boettcher, about the software restriction policies? It only works in Windows 10 Pro and Enterprise. It doesn't appear to work in Home.
That's right. It doesn't appear to work in Home, which I didn't realize I had on this box here. Just skipped my mind.
Okay.
Right?
No worries.
So.
No worries. Can you revert back to Windows 7 or whatever to be able to, there's not going to be a lot of people using Windows 7, to be fair, right? So, I mean, you're going to want to be thinking about Windows 8. You're going to want to think about Windows 10 for your environment.
Well, if you type in, what is it? You can get to it from PowerShell. You can get to it from a bunch of places, right? So, if you just type in, what is it? Group policy in the search bar, you'll get gpedit, and you'll be able to, or just run gpedit.msc, which I'm going to do now, gpedit.msc. Yep. And then, go from there. Let's see. Get back to my window here. New software restriction policy. Good.
Yep. So in Windows 7 and 8, it works fine. Which, if you're still having to use even Windows XP, this might be an additional way of securing your XP boxes. If you can't get upgraded to, the newer versions of Windows, this may be an additional way to lock down those mission critical XP boxes that you can't immediately fix.
All right. And then when you're able to open up, you select additional rules, and then you can start typing in rules. Mm-hmm. So the two rules that I recommend you do first would be star.lnk. This will allow your symlinks to work, right? So if you have your Windows Explorer little symlink at the bottom, it'll allow that to work. And then if you type, go ahead.
In Windows, those are called shortcuts, but yeah.
Yes,
in
shortcuts.
In Unix, it's called symlinks, but yeah, you're right. I'm sorry.
And then you want to type the security level as unrestricted, and then your next rule should be to disallow everything in user space. So type in, add a rule and type in C:/users/* and hit disallow, so that nothing is allowed to run in user space.
So that means you can't run an exe from your desktop.
You can't run an exe from user space, right? If you click on, hey, I want to run Microsoft Word, that's not in user space. That's in C program files.
Yeah, but I mean,
right?
if I was to install something to say my, let's say like, what am I running? Commander, CMDER, which is a console emulator. It installs things onto like my C drive users files. So I would have to find a different place to put that.
If you found a different place to put it, that's one way. Or if you wrote in an exception as a rule. Okay. So try it out with PuTTY, right? PuTTY's a standalone executable. Mm-hmm. So put PuTTY on your desktop and double click it, and you'll get a notification saying, "Hey, something tried to run."
Okay.
And it was blocked by local policy. Yeah,
it'll tell you, what does it say? Is like, this has been blocked by software restriction policy. Please contact your administrator. Of course, if you've got everything set up correctly, when you double click on putty.exe, your administrator is going to get an alert saying somebody tried to run something on a restricted area, right?
Well, I doubt it.
Oh, really?
right?
It won't show up
if
in the
they're
log
forwarding
files?
logs, well, if they're forwarding logs to Splunk and they want to, or your SIEM, and they want to alert on such facts, then yeah. But this is pretty much local, right?
Okay.
So you're just, I mean, for purposes of learning about it, let's just do it on your local machine.
Yeah.
Play around with it, right? Before you implement it corporate-wide. Unless your organization is mature enough where this is already set up.
Yeah.
And you're just learning about it.
Now, the other thing is, if you've already been infected with malware, this won't fix anything because you're basically would be whitelisting anything that's already in the directory, right?
Not necessarily. Okay, so when we looked at Dridex, which is a in-memory only, super secret, super stealthy type malware, we found that in order to maintain persistence when you shut down, it has to write to disk.
Okay.
And it did. And guess where it wrote? It wrote to user space.
Okay.
Right? So it wrote a file on shutdown in user space. And then what happens when it kicks back on? It, in addition to writing that file, it would also write a run key in the registry.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, when you boot the box back up, the run key executes something in user space. And guess what happens if you have software restriction policies set for user space? Dridex doesn't run. Now, it'll run initially, right, when you first get infected, but once you reboot the box, you'll get an alert saying, hey, something tried to run here. What the heck?
Yeah.
And then since that executable didn't run, you can go to your run key and then you can see it.
Oh, very nice.
Yep. So as part of the execution, if it was allowed to run, it deletes the run key. So you don't really see it anywhere once you boot up.
Okay. Right? Okay.
So even with the in-memory only malware, yes, it may run for a time, but once you reboot, usually they set this stuff in user space.
Very nice.
So yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, it'll run on startup, but on the second time when it's trying to write back to the hard drive, if you put in the software security restriction policies, it won't be able to write. Well, you get some kind of error, and that'll be like, knowing that you've got an issue on shutdown, should things be trying to write, it's
I can write stuff there because it's basically data, but once it executes.
Yeah.
Right. And now that I remember, in case of this particular variant of Dridex, it would write when you get infected, as per Word doc, it'll write an executable in user space and then execute it. So software restriction policies would have even prevented Dridex from running.
Very nice. Okay.
In the first place. Now there may be something else that doesn't require that somehow gets in memory by infecting, I don't know, Explorer, Notepad, things like that, and executing those in admin space.
Yeah.
But, again, you're talking about the 5 or 10% of malware, the good stuff, the targeted stuff that, can bypass these policies.
Okay. So, I mean, obviously, if you, like I said before, if you do get too restrictive on this and you find that your system won't boot, or it starts to cause regular programs to start acting incorrectly, you can always go in and disable it until you figured out what's wrong with it. It's always good to definitely test this before you try pushing it out in production to make sure that your users don't have any issues, because the minute they start having issues, you're definitely gonna hear about it.
All right. Oh, nice.
What's that?
So yeah, it's going to be under computer configuration in the local group policy editor. Mm-hmm. It's going to be under computer configuration, Windows settings.
Yep. Security settings.
Security settings, software restriction policies.
Yep. And then if you go down to application control policies, there's one for Applocker as well, which you can actually set specific rule enforcement for Applocker stuff. Wow. Executable rules, Windows installer rules, script rules, and packaged application rules. Specify whether Applocker rules are enforced for each rule collection. I wonder what that means. Okay, so you can set whether you want to enforce it or audit only. So you can say whether you want to enforce the rules or just listen like you're in IDS mode. So it's like an application IDS where you're noticing, or you either have rules that enforce this. So it's a lot like an IDS or IPS where you can, notify whether or not certain applications are doing something, or whether you're just saying, okay, well, if, when you run Notepad, this is what's going to happen, or what.
Yeah. And then when you do get these errors, and you will, they'll come up saying, hey, this thing was blocked by local policy. You can open up Event Viewer, go into the Windows logs under the application space, and check for 866 events. So when something is blocked, it'll generate an 866 event. Mm-hmm. Click on that event and go read exactly what was blocked. So then you can investigate or put in add that file to your whitelist. Okay,
and that'll also let you know if you've done something too restrictive, then it screws up a regular application too, right? Is that the whitelist you're talking about?
That's right. That's your local policy whitelist.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
When you say, hey, I want to add.
Well, that'll be an interesting. That'll be interesting as well, because if you're testing out new applications, you can also find out exactly what an application is going to do to your system, and that may be a way of knowing whether or not you want to use that application or not. Because if it's spraying data all over the place, or pulling in DLLs that you don't want it to pull in, then because I'm assuming if you're calling DLLs from a restricted directory as well, that's a DLL that has to be executed, and you can stop that as well. It won't load DLLs.
Right. I think that DLLs
might be the Applocker thing, because
DLLs aren't executables in and of themselves.
Well, they'd be hooked, right? They get hooked into the program, so they'll get called.
They get called.
Will that block the DLLs then, or will it allow those to run?
Well, I don't know if DLLs are in there by default. Well, see, DLLs aren't executed, right? They're just added.
Okay. Well, that may be an Applocker thing then. I mean, maybe
they're dynamic link libraries, right?
Yeah. Well, in Applocker properties, if you go to the advanced tab on that, it says DLL rules can affect system performance. Only enable DLL rules after thoroughly reviewing the Applocker documentation. You can affect system performance and cause unexpected behavior. So if software restriction policy doesn't do it, you may want to look into something like Applocker if you're wanting to block which application pulls which DLLs. Because, like I've sat in on Mr. Goff's class when I lived in Austin, and he was talking about DLL injections. So you can have programs inject DLLs or a malicious DLL inside of an application. So that may be a way of restricting what DLLs get loaded using the Applocker function. So that's interesting. I've never seen that. Applocker's been around since, I think they said 2003 and Windows 7. So, or Windows 7 and Windows 2008. So it's been around a few years as well. So, this has definitely been a very strong Blue Team episode. If you as a Blue Teamer is looking to increase your security posture, I would definitely look into software restriction policies. If you're not using GPOs already, definitely want to use those, or maybe investigate Applocker for locking down some of those pesky applications.
So you back from chasing the Applocker squirrel? I mean, that could be a podcast in and of itself, Applocker.
I don't know. We might want to find somebody who's knowledgeable of the Applocker, and maybe if anybody out there is using Applocker, or maybe they found a creative way of using software restriction policy. To be honest, I've never used either of these because I've never really been big into Windows admin. So
what you do is you go into the rules, and it's like I said, it's like a firewall.
Yeah.
Right. You unrestrict certain things, and you disallow. Well, I guess you disallow everything by default in user space, and then you add exceptions to that.
Okay.
So there you go. It's whitelisting at its best, right?
Yeah, very nice. Very nice.
So are we gonna end this cast right now? Because I have a takeaway.
No, definitely. I want to hear about your takeaway.
Okay, I just want to reiterate what Marcus said on a previous cast. Marcus Carey.
Marcus Carey, right?
Yeah, he basically said that, this hackers can't break the rules, right? So if you create the rules yourself, they can't break them. Right? So if you whitelist everything in user space, because that's where most of this stuff gets dropped in user space, then you're going to be that much safer. We're talking 80, 90% of all the hackery that could happen on your machine is blocked by default.
Yeah.
Right. So test this out on your own machine, right? Look at these 866 events, because once, there's a little learning curve there. Once you set all these rules, and some programs are worse than others. Some programs just run executables all day long in user space. I know GoToMeeting is one that, come on, people, stop executing things in user space. But once you run it and you put these exceptions in and you use the wildcards, like they'll install a new version or whatever, but the wildcard will take care of that. Once you get these rules in place, these rules can apply to across your organization. So So do it for yourself. Find out how you like it. If your entire organization gets cryptoed or something like that, you're going to be the only one that's like, hey, man, I saw it come through. It tried to run on my machine, but it was blocked. I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, you mentioned the hackers have to play by your rules. So basically it's a big giant game, and they just have to learn how to play by your rules. One guy's game of chess is another guy's, depending on which network they're in,
Well, see, the good thing is you can set the rules. You create the rules.
You create your own environment. Yeah.
Right. So how can they play if they don't know the rules?
Exactly. Right. And that, exactly. And I've mentioned the term attacker debt before. This just increases the amount of attack debt that they have to overcome to be able to, get into your system. So they either have to find another place where you didn't lock up the directory and be able to execute there, or, they're just going to have to move on. So,
and if you get complaints because Sally can't install her malware-laden adware, tracking PDF creator application, maybe you should have a conversation with her and say, look, if you're installing this stuff, look what happens. You get these ads, you get trackers, and it actually gets rid of some security measures in your browser.
Yep.
Right. Yep. So there's those conversations that you can have. I've noticed that a lot of employees that I've talked to that download freeware on their machine, and that we notice that they have adware, and I asked them, why do you need this? Right. I've started asking that question. And I've gotten reasons like, well, I need to print these handouts out, and it's an easy way for me to print handouts. Well, did you know that PowerPoint can also print handouts? It's a kind of a non-intuitive procedure to do it. But once you know the procedure, it's already built in. So you don't need all this freeware, right? And in every case where someone has come to me and says, well, I have to do this for my job, I found other means for them to do what they needed to do with the software that was given to them on day one, paid for by the organization.
Yeah. And that's just a policy thing too. If they're going to want to install software, one, I guess you could even, you could lock it down to say, users can't install software. Or, the policy just has to be there that if you want to install software, you have to go through a process, go to this website, tell us why you need it. We promise to reply within so many minutes. Maybe your help desk started to do this, and you go, okay, well, to print a PDF, all you got to do is have Office 2016, and you can save as a PDF, or you can print as a PDF, or whatever. Those things are already in there. You don't need to buy, or you don't need to have, Uber PDF creation tool.ru to be able to do whatever. So, yeah.
You got it.
Right on.
Just make sure they know what the process is, and they don't have to try and find things out for themselves and end up getting malware.
Yeah, exactly.
And, becoming patient zero just because they wanted to try and do their job and the information wasn't there at their fingertips.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I can't fault people for wanting to do their jobs, but they need to try to, think about what they're doing when they just blindly install things. I know.
Well, it's back on you, Brian. You need to inform them on what the best way and the best route to do that is.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
They need to know, if they want to do a certain task that's out of the ordinary or that's new, they need to know who to talk to make sure that it's okay.
Absolutely. And that's just education, maybe something, regular email saying, hey, you want to install software. Here's how you do that. Or, that's part of the whole training aspect of security. We need to be educating the users. We need to, be approachable in case somebody needs to ask that question, Yeah. So, well, let me ask you a question, Mr. Boettcher. If people wanted to discuss software restriction policies with you more, or to be able to talk about Applocker or whatever, how would they get a hold of you?
The best way is on Twitter at BoettcherPwned.
Okay.
BoettcherPwned.
All right. And you have a website now because you're all big and fancy with your company, right? You're CEO of, what is it now?
I'm the lead janitor.
Lead janitor.
IMF Security. Right?
Okay.
So imfsecurity.com.
Right on. Okay. So the BreakSec podcast is we're getting a ton of new listeners. I don't know what it is. We're not the only ones. I think Risky Business said he was averaging a few more downloads than us. But we appreciate all the new listens. If you're a new listener, please feel free to check out our previous 2 years worth of podcasts. And welcome to the ride. We're just here to help educate you and anybody else that you want to turn on to the podcast. So our official Twitter is at BreakSec, BRAKESEC. You can follow me, Brian Brake, at Twitter at BRYANBRAKE. It's just my whole name, first and last. We have a Patreon. Of course, I mentioned Patreon earlier. If you follow us now at the $20 level and you want to go to DerbyCon, you can be entered in to get a ticket. We're going to draw that on August 15th. But if you just want to support us at the $5 or the $10 or the $1 level even, that's great. What it does is it helps support hosting for the podcast. We have to pay Libsyn for hosting. We also, we don't make a lot of money on this. So at the end of the year, we usually just give whatever we earned from, people to Hackers for Charity. We gave $150 of money last year to Hackers for Charity. I actually doubled it and gave them $300 because I thought $150 was a little low. So, and like I said in the drawing, you can give us at the $20 level and support us that way. If you want to go to DerbyCon, we're going to be there. So, if you're a patron and you let us know, we'll definitely buy you the first adult drink that you would like to have, or a regular drink. Otherwise, we're on Facebook. Barring serious injury, we'll be there. Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'm actually taking a red eye that night, Wednesday night, to get in like Thursday morning at 10 a.m. It's going to be awful. I'm going to be riding that Ambien train. Woot, woot. So we're on LinkedIn. We have a Facebook page. We're on medium.com if you like that blogging site, which I've actually found several decent blogs on there. We're on Tumblr. We're also on various podcast radio networks. We're on the Google Play Store. We're on iTunes. TuneIn Radio, FM, Player.fm. There's really no way that you can escape us. We're pretty much everywhere that you want to be. We're like Visa, pretty much, I think. So there's really no excuse for you not to be listening. And tell your friends that Windows Audio. I think I tried to get us in the Zune store before it died too. So that was it for Breaking Down Security this week. Check out the CTF, listen to that last week's podcast, the May 1st podcast or May 2nd podcast, and, join the CTF. It's a lot of fun, and, have a great week, and we will talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.